Have you ever felt invisible, even while standing in the center of a room? Have you ever had the sensation that, as the years go by, your voice has grown quieter, your presence more discreet, as if the world were pushing you into a corner where mature women are meant to watch life pass in silence? Maybe you learned that, to be desired, you must please, that to be loved, you must give in, that to be noticed, you must look younger, thinner, something you're not. And in the midst of that exhausting effort, something was lost. You. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "It doesn't matter what they did to you. What matters is what you do with what they did to you." And perhaps now is the time to do things differently. You were not born to live for the gaze of others. Yet for a long time, you likely measured yourself by that gaze. Male validation, social approval, beauty standards, all of these became a kind of distorted mirror in which you seek recognition and find only demands. But what if being irresistible has nothing to do with what you were taught? What if it isn't about appearing perfect, but about being whole, about occupying the world with presence, not with permission? The truly irresistible woman is not the one who hides her wrinkles, her fears, or her stories. She owns them. She doesn't become invisible over time. She becomes more defined, because she stopped playing roles and began to live as the author of herself. In this video, you will learn 9 habits that have nothing to do with makeup, dieting, or cheap seduction. These are existential habits, conscious choices, small acts of freedom that transform the way you place yourself in the world, and for that very reason, awaken a magnetic force no standard can explain. After all, desire is not born of perfection, it is born of presence, and presence is the opposite of performance. The woman who knows this becomes rare, and what is rare is irresistible. Are you ready to abandon the masks and claim your place in the world? Are you ready to understand how your freedom, embraced with courage, can be the greatest aphrodisiac there is? If so, take a deep breath. Look at yourself not as someone seeking approval, but as someone who claims her own project. Because from now on, you will discover what happens when a woman stops apologizing for being who she is and begins to exist with the full intensity of her maturity. First habit, she does not ask permission to exist. From a young age, we are taught to apologize, to ask permission to speak, to take up space, to exist. We grow up believing the world tolerates us, when in fact it needs our full presence. But an irresistible woman does not enter a room apologetically. She enters as someone who knows she belongs, not out of arrogance but out of awareness. She does not shrink herself, nor adapt to others' molds. And above all, she does not wait for authorization to be who she is. Jean-Paul Sartre said that the human being is not a fixed thing, but a project, in constant construction. And that means no one will hand you a manual, permission, or endorsement. You must choose yourself, every single day. Think of the times you held back from saying what you thought out of fear of displeasing. The times you wore something you didn't want to, smiled when you wanted to cry, fell silent when your truth was screaming. Each gesture of that kind is a small assassination of your freedom. A woman who does not ask permission is not a rebel without a cause. She is someone who understands her existence is not a request, it's a declaration. Her voice is not an echo, it's a fountain. And her body is not a decorative object, it's sovereign territory. She enters a space and her presence is felt because she does not try to be invisible, because she is not there to be approved. She is there to be. And when you claim that place, something changes, not only in others, but in yourself. Confidence does not spring from applause, it springs from commitment to your own truth. So, if today you wonder why you feel small, irrelevant, dispensable, perhaps it's because you are living in anticipation of a permission that will never come. The world will not crown you. You must lift your own crown. Stop now, breathe, and ask yourself, what would you do today if you weren't waiting for anyone's approval? That is the first habit, the hardest, but also the most transformative. Habit 2. She turns insecurity into presence. You might think the irresistible woman is the one who never doubts, who walks confidently in high heels with unshakable self-esteem. But that is a myth. The truth is every woman feels fear. Every woman has insecurities. What changes is what she does with them. Sartre reminds us that anguish is the price of freedom. And that is precisely what a mature woman understands. Feeling fear is natural. What is not natural is allowing that fear to dictate your life. She does not wait for confidence to arise before acting. She acts even with a trembling voice, because she knows confidence comes after action, not before. Turning insecurity into presence means stopping hiding. It means accepting that your vulnerability is part of what makes you human and deeply magnetic. It is not the varnish that attracts. It is the truth. Think of a woman who enters a room without trying to seem perfect. She breathes, looks you in the eye, acknowledges her doubts, and yet she places herself fully. That is presence. Insecurity does not disappear, but when you integrate it, it transforms into courage. Not the courage of someone who feels no fear, but of someone who feels it and chooses anyway. The irresistible woman does not need to be the most beautiful, the youngest, or the most successful. She only needs to be there, whole. Because authentic presence cuts through the air. It changes the frequency of a place. How many times have you refrained from doing something because you thought yourself insufficient? What if, instead of hiding your doubt, you acknowledged it and still moved forward? Remember, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is presence in the midst of fear. And when you turn your insecurity into presence, you stop being a spectator and become the protagonist of your own scene. Habit 3. She does not negotiate her authenticity to be loved. How many times have you molded yourself to another's desire to avoid rejection, silenced your opinion, swallowed discomfort, donned a character to seem more likable? That has a name: bad faith. And Sartre was merciless in describing it as the denial of our own freedom. The woman who negotiates her authenticity in hopes of being chosen is not being loved. She is being tolerated. She is not being seen. She is being projected onto. And deep down, she knows it. She knows there is something artificial about that acceptance, that the price of being accepted was ceasing to be herself. But the irresistible woman does not perform. She exists. She does not seek to fit in. She demands space. And that scares people. Because anyone who is whole disturbs those who live in pieces. She understands that love, which requires her to disfigure herself in order to fit, is not love. It is dependence, convenience, cowardice. And so she chooses. She chooses to be true to herself before being pleasing to someone else. This does not mean arrogance. It means self-respect. It means knowing that to be truly loved is only possible when you are truly present, and not as an edited version of yourself. She is not afraid to say no, not because she is cold, but because she knows each no she gives the world is a yes she gives herself. And that yes is worth more than any superficial approval. The woman who does not negotiate her authenticity carries a rare glow, the glow of someone who does not need to be chosen to feel whole, of someone who chooses herself every day, even when the world insists on devaluing her. Now think, what part of you has been sacrificed to maintain a love, a friendship, a facade of harmony? What in you has been suffocated so that the other person feels comfortable? This is the breaking point. The irresistible woman does not fear displeasing. She fears losing herself, and so she preserves herself, even if that costs the admiration of someone who would only love an illusion. Habit 4. She understands male desire without shaping herself to it. There is a subtle trap many women fall into over the course of their lives, understanding how male desire works and, upon realizing it, beginning to mold themselves to it, ceasing to be in order to become desirable, ceasing to live in order to be seen. But the mature, irresistible woman does not ignore male desire. She understands it, and precisely for that reason refuses to bow to it. She knows that the gaze of the other is inevitable, but she refuses to make that gaze her mirror. As Sartre wrote, "Hell is other people, when we live only through their eyes." She knows many men are attracted to performance, artificial sweetness, rehearsed submission, insecurity disguised as meekness, and yet she chooses to be whole, because she knows attracting by illusion carries a high price. living constantly in fear of being unmasked. This woman does not hide her opinion to seem pleasant. She does not diminish herself to seem delicate. She does not infantilize herself to seem attractive. She understands that her value lies in her wholeness, and that the right man will be the one capable of desiring her. Wholeness, not her diluted version. She does not need to play games. She shows herself, and this confuses those accustomed to masks, because she is not predictable. She is not there to entertain. She is there to live, and living, for her, is an act of freedom, not of seduction. This does not mean being indifferent. It means being selective. It means understanding that desire worth having is not the one that demands you lose yourself, but the one that celebrates who you already are. Ask yourself, how many parts of you were silenced in the name of being more attractive? And what if you stopped adjusting and began observing who is truly capable of desiring a living woman, not a molded image? That is the irresistible woman, the one who understands the game, and precisely because of that, refuses to play, because she knows the prize of being desired by someone who does not see you is never worth it. Habit 5. She cultivates silence and mystery. We live in an age of excess of speech, exposure, noise, as if a person's value lay in their ability to explain themselves all the time, to show themselves completely, to always be available. But the irresistible woman understands the power of what is left unsaid. She cultivates silence as one would tend a rare plant, because she knows silence is not absence, it is refined presence. Mystery is not manipulation, it is depth. She understands she does not need to pour herself out to be felt. Sometimes, one lingering look, one gesture that carries time, one pause that says more than any rehearsed phrase is enough. Sartre said, "All consciousness is consciousness of something, and this woman is consciousness of herself." She does not fill emptiness with useless talk. She does not rush to respond, justify, please. She allows herself to exist in silence, and that silence is an invitation to true encounter, not an armor. Think of the difference between someone who overexposes out of insecurity and someone who reveals themselves, slowly, with calm, with intention. The first seeks acceptance. The second knows she does not need explaining, only perceiving. The woman who cultivates mystery is not hiding who she is. She is protecting herself from superficial consumption. She understands what is valuable is not delivered all at once, and that her interior world is not a product, but sacred territory. She is in no rush to be known, because someone with depth does not fear being discovered, only refuses to be summed up. Ask yourself, how many times have you rushed to say too much, show too much, give too much, out of fear of not being enough? And what if, instead, you let your presence be felt gradually, like a piece of music that unfolds in layers? Mystery is not coldness, it is respect. And silence, far from being absence, is the densest form of presence. A woman who knows this becomes unforgettable, because she does not shout who she is. She lets the world listen in silence. Habit 6. She chooses whom to spend her. Freedom. With freedom is not just the power to come and go. It is deciding with whom you share what is most precious, your presence, your time, your energy. The irresistible woman understands this. She does not spread herself in all directions. She chooses, and that choice is a form of dignity. Sartre reminds us that we are responsible for what we choose to be, and that responsibility extends to the relationships we accept, the bonds we nurture, the presences we allow in. The woman who has understood her freedom does not accept emotional scraps. She does not tolerate draining presences, empty promises, interactions that demand she dim herself, because she knows each yes to another is also a yes to a certain life. And she no longer accepts just any life. She does not choose out of fear of being alone. She chooses for genuine connection. She is not fooled by pretty words when actions are small. She observes, feels, waits, and if necessary, she refuses. Not out of bitterness, but out of awareness. Because being alone, for her, is better than being poorly accompanied. She has made peace with her own company, and that makes her free, and for that very reason, so desirable. This woman does not beg for attention. She inspires it. She does not chase after those who do not want to stay. She moves on, because she knows each step toward another is also a step within herself. And she does not walk impulsively. She walks by choice. Now think, with whom have you spent your freedom? How many times have you clung to someone just to avoid facing the void? And what if that void were, in fact, the space needed to rediscover your power? The irresistible woman does not fear the silence between relationships. She knows that pause is also part of the dance, and that only one who chooses with courage can love wholly. Habit 7. She does not need to be admired to feel alive. There is a brutal difference between being admired and feeling alive. One depends on others' gaze. The other is born from within. The irresistible woman knows exactly where that line is, and no longer crosses it. From early on, many women learn to measure their worth by others' reactions, praise, approving glances, silent applause. And over time, it becomes an addiction to being seen, noticed, desired. But others' desire does not fill an existential void. It only postpones the meeting with it. Jean-Paul Sartre said that being for itself is that which makes itself, chooses itself, recognizes itself. And that is exactly what this woman practices. She recognizes herself, even when no one applauds, even when the world gives nothing in return. She dresses because she likes what she sees in the mirror, not because she expects compliments. She posts, expresses, walks, dances, reinvents herself, because it is vital for her freedom, not for her personal marketing. This unsettles those accustomed to women who live to please, because she does not bow to the logic of spectacle. She has nothing to prove. She lives. Of course, she appreciates being noticed, desired, recognized. But that is a consequence, never a condition. She does not need it. She chooses it. And that choice is powerful because it makes her independent of applause, free from neediness, immune to comparison. Think, how many of your actions are driven by genuine desire, and how many by the need to be seen? If no one were watching, would you still do what you do? This woman would, because she is alive even when unobserved. She is her own witness. And that, in the end, is what makes her truly irresistible. Habit 8. She treats solitude as encounter, not punishment. For many women, solitude is seen as a sentence, something to avoid, fill, disguise. But the mature, irresistible woman has learned something that changes everything. Solitude is not absence, it is possibility. Not punishment, it is encounter. Sartre spoke of the radical solitude of being. Ultimately, we stand alone before our choices, our freedom, our existence. But fleeing from that is fleeing from oneself. The woman who becomes irresistible went to that place and returned stronger. She not only endures solitude, she transforms it into home. She dines alone with pleasure. She walks in silence without feeling empty. She travels unafraid of not having someone to share the view with, because she learned to share with herself. And, in that gesture, stopped depending on another to feel whole. This does not mean she does not desire company. It means her own company ceased to be an urgency and became a choice. And when love is a choice, not an escape, it becomes much deeper. This woman does not use someone else's presence to escape herself. On the contrary, she only surrenders when she has already found herself. And that is precisely why her presence is so rich. Because she comes unburdened by expectations. She comes full of herself. How many times have you sought someone just to avoid feeling silence? How many times have you confused presence with filling a void and company with anesthesia? The irresistible woman does not anesthetize her existence. She feels it fully, and when she is alone, she expands. Because she realizes that solitude, when faced with courage, is the condition for any true relationship, including the one with herself. She is alone not because no one wanted her. She is alone because she learned to want herself before wanting anyone else. And that act of silent autonomy is paradoxically what makes her more desired. Habit 9. She is the author of her own desire. For too long, women were taught to be the object of desire, to be desirable, to be chosen. to be seen as someone who awakens the interest of others. But the irresistible woman inverts that logic. She is not only desired, she desires. And more than that, she chooses what she desires. Sartre said, "Man is what he makes of what has been made of him." The woman who frees herself understands that desire is not something that comes from outside. It is an internal movement, a fire that need not be validated, only embraced. This woman does not wait to be invited. She invites, does not wait to be loved. She loves, with courage, and if not reciprocated, she does not nullify herself, because her desire is not begging, it is sovereign. She knows what she wants, and what she no longer wants, and above all, she knows she can change her mind without apologizing, because desire is not static, it moves with life, and she is alive. She takes initiative, speaks of her boundaries, expresses her will, in body, in conversation, in intimacy, because she understands that repressed desire becomes illness, and denied desire becomes submission. This woman does not seduce out of neediness. She enchants because she is free, and that freedom often unsettles, because she does not play to capture. She lives to overflow, and she stays only where she can be whole. Ask yourself, what have you truly desired, and whom have you been waiting for? Permission to feel that for? The irresistible woman does not wait. She listens to herself, and by doing so, she comes to occupy not just her body, but her story. She lives as one who writes a book, not as one who memorizes someone else's script. She is the author of her own desire, and in that act, she ceases to be a character and becomes the protagonist, not of a fairy tale, but of an authentic, courageous, and absolutely alive existence. You have made it this far because you sense something that goes beyond aesthetics, beyond behavior, beyond the rules you were taught. You know deep down that a woman's true power does not lie in pleasing. It lies in owning herself. The 9 habits we have explored today are not seduction tricks. They are practices of freedom. They are ways of existing as a whole in a world that constantly asks you to be less. Sartre taught us that we are condemned to be free, and that means that even when we try to shirk responsibility for our choices, it still falls on us. Living authentically is accepting that weight and transforming it into power. The irresistible woman is not the one who pleases everyone. She is the one who chooses herself, who occupies her spaces with courage, who transforms her solitude into freedom, her insecurity into presence, her silence into density. She does not live to be admired. She lives to be whole, and for that very reason, awakens something rare: respect, fascination, true desire. So now I ask you, with all sincerity, how many parts of you are waiting for permission that will never come? How many of your choices still depend on fear of displeasing? Today, you can begin a movement. You do not need to change everything at once, but you must take the first step, an act of courage, a refusal, a yes spoken aloud. With each authentic choice, you become more present. With each boundary set, more whole. With each truth embraced, more alive. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be you, and being you, fully, in a world that trained you to be half, that indeed is what makes you truly irresistible. Choose who you want to be today, and in doing so, remember, the woman who frees herself is the woman who ignites.